Hello, I've been a bit unwell. I came down with something, so I've spent the last 2 days playing Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Um, but I must keep complaining. That's my duty. I'm gonna keep it short though, because I'm graded 20 points under Impairment Table 1 for functions requiring physical exertion and stamina by the Department of Social Services, so, well, you can imagine. But today I wanted to briefly touch on why I was rejected in 2015. Um, So here are some details from my job capacity assessment in 2015. I'll just let them sit on screen for a bit. This image shows the verdict of the psychologist who assessed my congenital bone disease. She writes that my condition is impacted by fatigue, so I'm suited to an occupation of office admin for 15 to 22 hours per week. Mind you, she wrote this report half a year after we had spoken, but I guess all the details must be fresh in her mind. I appealed my rejection, and after a few weeks of waiting, the Arrow officer determined her assessment is correct. I'm not disabled. He writes that DSP is for individuals who cannot work 15 hours a week, even though the legislation says 16. And prior to John Howard, who, by the way, diverted welfare spending to military warfare, funding Australia's involvement in the Afghanistan war, was 30 hours. That was the threshold. It's not nationalism that determines that one of the manifest medical rules for DSP is that you are a veteran. It's a necessity for soldiers returning from war. The Arrow officer's assessment notes that my disability is not severe enough and that I'm not going to improve, so it'll be fine. This image, he in 1,000 words going around in circles. He acknowledges my surgeries and prognosis, but notes that I am not currently required to undergo joint replacement, so I must work for welfare for the next 2 years, and if I decline, maybe then. He argues I experience fatigue and pain throughout my body, but I can take Nurofen for that, so get over it. He argues further that I was studying full-time at university, doing a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and could sit in class for 2 to 3 hours, so it can't be that bad. He then concludes that I walk to uni from my unit, which is 1 kilometre away, in 10 minutes. This point I'd really like to hone in on. Have you ever walked 1 kilometre in 10 minutes, dear listener? That is a very, very brisk pace. If you knew me personally and have ever travelled with me, then you would know that I'm an absolute slowpoke. Also, there is not a single mention of the fact that I walked to my JCA with 2 underarm crutches. It took me forever to walk to the Centrelink, and I lived 500 metres from uni at the time, so this point is completely invalid. My old lecturers, who are now watching my descent into madness, can attest how often I was late or absent entirely. To be honest, my memory is pretty foggy from this time, but I do remember lying about things I struggled with during my JCA. Undergoing a JCA is abhorrent. It made me feel worthless when I was a teenager, and it makes me feel worthless as an adult. When people hear my story, usually the first thing they say is along the lines of, obviously you are disabled. Which, I'll be frank, is not really an affirmation in this context, and I don't know how to reply. The JCA is a hate crime because the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability says I'm entitled to dignity, but there's nothing dignified about debating with Centrelink about my capacity. Maybe if I had really unpacked how useless I was to them when I was 18, or appealed further and taken myself to court, which is the next level up of appeal, the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, to really undersell and degrade myself, maybe then I would have the luxury of living on the DSP since I was 18. But I wanted to be able to live with myself. What I did do, though, was right from the beginning of my application, tell them my capacity. This image shows my capacity that I self-advocated for. When I say I want the right to speak for myself, I mean that my perspective is completely meaningless. I told them I had done some admin work in high school, but no more than 8 to 10 hours a week, which is a pass, under the metric of 15 hours he failed me under. This image also shows the 18 lines on a half page you are allowed to self-advocate under notes. I really could have not been more clear when I said, condition was manageable while living at home. but I can't do my studies and work and live by myself. I have stamina problems. I know I have been complaining about this for going on 10 weeks now, but I mean, come on. I mean, seriously? What am I, a ham sandwich? I'm talking here. Anyway, I waffled on longer than I expected, but stamina problems would be damned. Let's say I could somehow travel 1 kilometer in 10 minutes when I was younger. I should have been a Paralympian, dude. I mean, now, at 26, I am much faster. As a wise man once said, gotta go fast. This will be my fastest address to the PM yet. Hey, Mr. Prime Minister, elbow. I would like the right to peacefully protest the impairment tables used by Centrelink to grade my body 35 points. The narrative goes that you grew up to a single mother living off the disability support pension, except when you were growing up it was called the invalid pension. The DSP has changed before it can change again. The impairment tables used to measure disabled people's capacity were no barrier to you when they were actioned by a Labour government in 2012. These were introduced right before I turned 18. It took my whole adult life for Centrelink to acknowledge my disability and grant me access to the DSP. With all due respect, back off. My congenital bone disease, spondylometaphysical metaphysical dysplasia Kozlowski type does not get bloody cured. What you are asking me to endure is degrading. When I am 35, you will still review me every 5 years to ask me questions like if I can hold a pencil, if I can carry 2-litre full cream milk. The last time I drink oat milk. Please, I'm begging you to stop mandating that strangers ask me if I can use the bathroom by myself. I have to review every 3 years with a medical professional anyway to check the status of my skeleton. Is the job capacity assessment absolutely necessary? Stop allowing Services Australia to debate my capacity like I'm not in the room. Swearing my disability using the impairment table is dehumanizing. It is a hate crime. A grade of 35 points is used to describe my body as mildly, moderately, and severely disabled. Centrelink scores 10 out of 10 on the FE scale. I rank their level of incompetence as extreme. If I hurt and yell and bleed, I am not even allowed to advocate that I am in pain without an accompanying doctor's note. I am not allowed to speak about my own lived experience of disability, and that stinks. I want the right to speak for myself. I want you to listen when I tell you condition was manageable while living at home, but I can't do my studies and work and live it by myself. I have stamina problems. There is no one more qualified on my disability than me. When employers of Centrelink assess somebody's disability using a point system, what they do is wrong on an ethical basis. I will continue to complain every week until my voice is heard, until you take my word for it, until the guidelines for accessing the DSP are made to be equitable and do not make people like me feel worthless. Today is week 10 of my protest. Regards, Dr. Sophie.